Okay, so I'm last. I'm probably quite least. There's a reason why I'm going last. I thought I'd keep it quite light-hearted. Been some really great talks today. So mine's really a kind of humorous look at all the things I've learned in the last 20 years about how people view data teams and data people. Um, there's a bit of a musical theme in my slides. So if you want to play along at home and try and guess the artist associated with each slide, I'll reveal some answers at the end. If not, you know, we can, can rock on. What makes me such an expert on building data teams, you wonder? So I've spent 20 years in the industry, which is quite a long time when I think about it. Most of that's been in data. I've worked in various roles in data, BI, developer, engineer, DBA, team lead, and currently a data product owner for Misguided. So if you want to talk to me, you can catch me on LinkedIn. And if you want to just see me ranting, there's my Twitter feed. And yeah, so before I begin, um, so if you're going to rock up and think there's a guy who's going to tell you everything that you need to know about data teams in 10 minutes, you're very much mistaken. I'm not going to. I'm not going to let even touch upon data-driven culture, data democratization, what makes great data teams like analysts, scientists, engineers, none of that. Where I'm going to start is really what great teams are built of, which is people really. And these are the things that I think I've come across over the last 15, 20 years in my various guises of what people think data people are. And just really debunking those myths that people hold about data people in general. Having said that, as you go along these myths that I've collected over the years, you'll be thinking, hang on, Cash, they've already been debunked. So, confession part two, yes, they are myths, but they've already been debunked. But I think the general point here is, and hopefully you get this by the end, that to really understand teams and data teams in general and data people in general, those stereotypes have existed at one point, and to an extent they still exist today. And it's really prevalent to understand how those makeup of a team are important to moving forward in an organization. So let's start with myth number one. We're just a bunch of geeks sat at the back. So when I first started in data, yes, data teams were very independent. They sat sort of outside of IT, sort of inside of business, sort of outside of business. There was a tendency to be really clunky with the release process. You know, we'd have development teams developing, releasing their stuff, then going to the data teams and releasing their stuff. And it was sometimes parallel. But I think over the last 20 odd years or the last 15 years with Agile and DevOps and infrastructure as code, that's really narrowed. Product teams as well have a tendency to embed all of those skills in the team. So I think as a myth has slightly not as prevalent today as it once was. Myth number two, we only care about indexes. Most data people worth their salt will always take performance into consideration. There used to be this age-old battle where certain non-data people were only concerned with the storage of data. They did not care what happened to that data, how it was built. They just wanted to dump it somewhere. And it was always left to data people to think about how performance it was. It's interesting, especially after listening to Louise's talk about the multifaceted approach to cloud computing. That conversation is still happening today. I found as I moved into more cloud technologies, performance is still a massive issue or a massive consideration going forward. So we've got data in the cloud, but how are we making it as performant as possible? Interestingly enough, this week my technical architect in my team sent me a article about indexing strategy in AWS. So it is something I think that often people forget about, but it's still as important as it was back in the day. DevOps mean we don't need a DB anymore. I think this is a very interesting one that a lot of people probably heard about. When I was in Manchester, can be quite an incestuous community from an IT perspective, and I was at a meetup once where I was wrongly introduced as a DBA to someone, and that person then said DevOps means we don't really need a DB anymore. Are you feeling redundant? Which was quite incendiary to me on two scores, really. First of all, I think we need to, in this day and age, we need to stop labeling people, especially with job titles that can mean so many things to so many different people, and focus on what people do rather than what they think that the job title does. The response to this from many DBAs has always been that DevOps has allowed DBAs to do what they were meant to do in the first place. If you rock up to any data conference or science meetup, this is still something that you'll find someone giving a talk about, which is the future role of the DBA in either cloud computing or in the modern world. And I would suggest that you understand what the roles and responsibilities are rather than just thinking about hiring a DBA or a data scientist or a data engineer, and see what problems you're solving. So I got to this point, and as you probably can tell, I've been crowbarring a few musical artists and things into it, and I was really struggling to find any songs or artists that had anything to do with reports. And I think I heard it through the grapevine is just pure genius. And it should really, I mean, I think it's wasted on a video meetup. It should really be in the physical space where either people groan or not. So, you know, I just wanted to take a moment of appreciating my little moment of genius there. The point here is, and I'm going to call out a lot of IT people, is, you know, I've been called a lot of things over the last couple of years, or, you know, even in this space, either on the data team, the BI team, the data BI team, the BI data team, the reporting team. It's amazing how many people, even the tech savvy, don't realize what data people do. The output is sometimes a metric, I agree, but there's, in data teams, it's such a multifaceted approach now. Data scientists, data engineering, data development, BI development, analyst kind of thing. We don't do just reports. It'd be amazing. It reminds me, when I first started in computing, my dad often used to get me to try and fix his computer, his hardware, and I would always tell him that I had absolutely no idea how to fix hardware. I was just a software developer. Yeah. Anyway, so moving on, when two tribes go to war. So ever since I've been involved in data, we've always had to pick one side. Yeah, SQL, MySQL, Postgres, SQL or NoSQL, relational, non-relational, even in data warehouses, using the Kimball camp or the non-Kimball camp. Now it's cloud versus on-prem, or AWS versus Azure or GCP. You know, as a result, most data people often get unfairly tarred with the brush that they're inflexible, and that's just not true. I think, again, just touching on a few of the talks in this meetup, most organizations are multifaceted, and that's the same with the data state. It's a very multifaceted approach. You'll find organizations will have a different level of data technologies governing the solutions or the problems that they're trying to fix. And most data people I know are very polyglot in that respect. They'll might nail their math to one math, but Yeah, they're not as inflexible as you think they are. Um, moving on to myth number 6, fashion. So again, that's another age-old thing. People will read something and they'll go, "Cash, can we have a big data or can we have a data lake? Surely we should get a data science function going." And whilst I'm not saying those things aren't important, we have to really start thinking about what problems we're solving rather than try to crowbar a solution into an organization just for the sake of it. Data science is a really good example. Most people just want data science like tomorrow, but they don't know what it takes for the organization to truly leverage a data science function, or what capabilities and cost it takes to get to that maturity, so that you can have a data scientist come in and do an actual data scientist job. Data lakes are really another a great example. Most data people will build data warehouses back in the day, and then someone will come along and go, "I've read a piece about data lakes in the future. Should we just not go to a data lake?" Still solving the same problems, mind you. And so we've come full circle. So I talked in myth number 1 about how teams sat outside traditionally, but they don't anymore. And likewise, when something goes wrong in the data field, there's still a tendency to blame the data people within the organization. But most teams are now so closely knit. It's a very collaborative feature. So, whilst we're happy to share successes, we should also share the burden of failure at the same time. So that's where I'm going to end it. There was a lot more myths I could have put in. I'm sure there's a lot more myths out there about how data people are viewed. So that's quite light-hearted. But if there's one takeaway that I want you to take away, is that teams, or building great teams, starts with people and understanding people. And once you start understanding the makeup of what people are needed, then you've got the basic or the great foundations of building an awesome team. And that's whether that's a data team or a non-data team. And then finally, if you were following along, you were trying to work out the artist, there you go. I'm sure Johnny would have liked that. That's me. Any questions?